there's been a lot of talk about, settler colonialism as a framework for understanding U.S. history and also for understanding Israeli history, and perhaps for understanding some of the instinctive harmony between the US and Israel. That is, this idea that white Europeans, that people who aren't white Europeans are just kind of incidental and don't really have any rights, and that it's the goal of white Europeans to go and take their land and turn it into white, create white European outposts around the world. That's sort of part of the ethos of settler colonialism. And then these colonizers feel constantly under threat by the people who they have displaced and dispossessed. And wow, just today, Leonard Peltier was denied parole for I can't remember how manyth time, and that there's an inordinate amount of violence necessary to maintain a settler colonial dominance over a dispossessed population. I think that settler colonial ideas and analysis are pretty deeply rooted in the US educational system, which certainly makes it easier to just kind of transfer that narrative to Israel and say, yes, these poor white Europeans are so under threat by the people they've dispossessed and displaced, and that their very existence depends on denying the existence of those they've dispossessed and displaced. And, you think about the contradictions when we study US history, like how fundamental ideas about freedom are in understanding, the United States is the land of the free, and, that the United States was founded on principles of freedom and equality. It's like, no, it wasn't. The United States was founded on principles of dispossession and slavery. How can you say it was founded on principles of freedom? It was founded on principles of settler colonialism. But living in this kind of state of denial is part of the settler colonial mind frame and the contortions you have to go into to maintain that. But, if you look at the history of US-Israel relations, you can also see that there's some very clear geostrategic reasons behind it. That so settler colonialism, you could say, plays a role, but it's not such a direct role. Like, we're settler colonizers and they're settler colonizers, so we like them because they're settler colonizers. But for the geostrategic regions is the United States' concern about the Middle East in the Cold War context, which is when the US alliance with Israel really develops, is during the Cold War, right? And its fear of Arab nationalism and of all anti-colonial nationalisms, and its need for a dependable ally in the Middle East. And when I say because of Middle Eastern oil, and because of the US desire for world dominance and anti-communism, and that Israel was a reliable ally because insofar as it had maintained that is, popular movements in the Arab world were a threat to Arab dictatorships that the United States supported. So those dictatorships always had this fundamental weakness that they had no popular support from their populations, even though they were supported by the United States, and they're called moderate as long as they supported the United States. It didn't matter how repressive they were at home. But that Israel's government had a popular mandate, having expelled the popular support it, and was much more stable in that respect. So there's a lot more, and so one could make the several steps argument that being a settler colonial country enabled it to have that kind of stability and popular support among the population. But there's multiple factors at stake in the US relationship with Israel. So the settler colonial nature of the two regimes is only one piece, although it's also true that if you look at, say, US in the Pacific, Australia and New Zealand are two of the big US allies, but at the same time, Japan and South Korea are US allies. And, the way that those Cold War alliances developed is not all about things like settler colonialism and racism. The Cold War and geostrategic interests play a huge role too.